I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Voltaire, essentially because there's a lot of complex things about his life, but quite frankly, I think that the most important thing for us to know is just that he really expressed the idea of freedom of religion. Voltaire was interesting guy. He basically made fun of everybody who was powerful in France, and so he got exiled a few times, and he wrote a lot of plays and books and all that jazz. But really, his personal opinion was that we, as the people, decide have the freedom essentially to decide our own religion. We have the freedom to say what we should say, and so freedom of speech and freedom of religion is what comes from Voltaire. And it's because of him that we today in the United States have this idea of separating the church and state. So in the United States today, the government cannot tell us what religion to believe. And in the opposite way, religion cannot influence our government. And so essentially, this was very unique for the time, because if you think about it, England, for example, they have an official church, right? If you are in England, you are part of the Church of England, and while there is a freedom to believe what you want, you're still expected to have that, the church values within that government structure. Today, in the United States, it's entirely different. We do not allow religion to affect our government, and we do not allow government to affect religions. And so that idea comes directly from Voltaire himself. Montesquieu is incredibly crucial for our American government today. He too is French, and he spent a lot of time thinking about how governments should be basically designed. And so when he was designing these ideas, the founding fathers of the United States basically looked at him because he created a very interesting form of government that they liked. And so obviously, Montesquieu, just like every other Enlightenment philosopher, is going to be incredibly involved within liberty. And so he believed that liberty, that freedom, is incredibly important, but we only feel free and we only feel that liberty when we are safe. And so essentially, just like everyone else, we have that social contract where we need to be safe. And so therefore, we're going to give up some of our freedoms for our government to help us feel that safety. And so he argued that if governments could provide and enforce clear laws that everyone's going to follow, basically every single person will have that freedom because they will feel the safety to express themselves. In order to achieve that, Montesquieu basically created the idea of separating powers. He really liked the government in England, and so I know that today we think of, okay, England has a queen and that's it, but that's not true. The English government has had three parts for a very long time. We have a king or a queen that basically enforces the laws. They're the head of that government. But then we have a parliament where we have people representing the average person in England, and they're going to create the laws based on the people's needs. And then we have a court system that will basically interpret the laws and see who broke the law and who didn't. And so these three parts of government basically allows the power to be spread out. It's not just like the king or queen has a power of everything. Parliament doesn't have the power of everything. The courts don't have the power of everything. We have three different branches of government where they each have their own purpose. And so Montesquieu called this the separation of powers. He said we took the power that you need to control a country and to run a country effectively and separated it out into pieces. And so what he did was he actually added something to this theory. He felt that we should have something called checks and balances. And so essentially, the issue with the English government was that we have these three sections of government with these three different powers and purposes, but we don't really have a way for one power to kind of stop the other from taking too much control. So Parliament had a hard time controlling the king. If the king really wanted something, the king can't really control Parliament, etc. And so what he felt was that we should have a system called checks and balances, where certain branches of the government have certain duties and responsibilities, but another branch is perfectly equal in its powers and actually has the ability to limit the power of the other two branches. So, for example, if the king tries to take too much control, Parliament and the courts together can stop him. But if Parliament tries to take too much control, then the king and the courts could stop them, right? So we have this idea of essentially a branch of government or two branches of government being able to stop one branch from taking too much power. And so we see this exactly in the United States today. James Madison, the writer of the Constitution and basically the creator of our government, divided the United States into three separate branches: the legislative, the judicial, and the executive. The legislative branches are Congress, and so Congress is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and they make the laws. They are the ones who listen to the people and propose bills, and they propose legislation where our opinions are heard and made into laws. The president is the executive branch, and it's the president's job to enforce those laws, right? It's his job to basically make sure that the laws that the Congress is passing is actually being enforced at a government level. And then finally, the judicial branch, which is basically the Supreme Court, they interpret the law. So if there's a law that's passed and the government, aka the president, is enforcing, like, yes, you have to register your dog in whatever city you're living in, the court system is going to make basically go, okay, is this law good? Is this law bad? Is this law clear enough? Like, maybe we should make sure that there, it says all dogs need to be registered, not just, big dogs or whatever it is. And so essentially what happens is the three branches together create the entire government. Now, they each have their separate powers, but they also have the power to limit the other people's um I guess you could just say power again, or they have the power to basically limit the other branch's actions. And so what it does is it keeps all sections of the government purely equal and very, very balanced. And this idea directly comes from Montesquieu.